moment to breathe. Grab a beverage or two. We got professional guests with lots of stories for you. So take a seat right here and join us on Careers Over Beers.
All right, welcome to Careers Over Beers podcast. This is kind of a special episode because I have some repeats on. Introduce yourselves again. Tell us who you are again.
I'm Kristi Windish.
Robyn Jackson.
Yeah, and you were the career advisors.
Yes.
On what episode was it? I got to look it up real quick now.
Are we supposed to remember the number?
I can't even remember the number.
Probably your highest rated one, obviously.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll just type in highest rated podcast here and find it. I don't know why I can't find it. I don't remember the number. It'll load here in a sec.
Okay.
But anyways, very special episode because if you haven't listened to it, you should definitely go back and listen to the Career Advisors episode that I have with them. They talk about what they provide, their services, all the unique factors that play into this aptitude test that come out of it that you can find and guide your kids or even adults with. So I made a promise to them that I was going to take it and see what my results ended up being. And we kind of went over that already over Zoom, but we wanted to come back on here and kind of show the world why it benefits you and how it's going to help you out in the world. Is that right?
Yes. Thanks for being the guinea pig and jumping in.
Yeah, I know. We're about to show the world how weird my brain is or how good or bad it is, right? What do most people say when they finish these tests? Do they say it's pretty hard?
It's a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Some of them, they're like, oh, I loved this one. And, oh, this one was difficult, and that's how it's supposed to be.
It is, yeah.
Because that's how our brains work.
It is.
So you and I both aren't going to be good at remembering phone numbers.
No, that's my lowest category is number memory, right? And I have my little booklet here. So this is the Career Assessment Summary Confidential Report. And this is important because not only is this podcast a way for me to just sit here and drink with people and BS and kind of just get to know people, but it's also a great way for people to listen and maybe find a career that they're interested in or maybe figure out a way to find that out. And that's kind of what's unique about your positions is that you're doing that for people. You're giving them this aptitude test. You're giving them this personality test, which I didn't realize was part of it. And from there, they can kind of see what they scored high in, what they scored low in, and you can kind of guide them in a direction, right?
Yes.
You're not trying to pick somebody's career for them.
Right.
You're just trying to show them, hey, you're going to be really good at this, or you're going to suck at this if you try to do this.
And there's objective data to go behind that. We're not just feeling around in the dark. Or what subject did you enjoy the most in school? It's not like that. We're using objective data to show you how you're wired and then point you to the careers that allow you to use those abilities. But looking at you as a whole, like you said, not just the ability part, but your personality. What's going to fit you best? Where are you going to be most content and enjoy? Even like when you've described your jobs and your gig that you don't feel like it's work. That's what we want for everybody, and that's why we want to look at each person as a whole and look at all of those different components, personality and interest and values as well with the aptitudes.
Yeah, and it's a beast. That test is a beast. Oh, my God. So I think it took me about 4 hours maybe, but I was doing things while I was doing it too. So I was in class and I was at work when I did a little bit of it. Hopefully my boss isn't listening, but it's crazy how a lot of these things are timed. Like you'll get a scenario where it says just type in it as many words as you can, or it'll say type in every word that you can think of when you see this shape. It'll be some random shape and they're like just type in every word that pops in.
Yes.
Yeah. Or the other one that got me was there was the tone test and it's like let us know if the sound is higher or lower pitched than the previous beep, and it would be like beep beep. It's the same thing.
It feels like a joke, doesn't it?
It feels like yeah. I'm like, there's no. Oh, I thought I was going to fail that hard.
We had to take this before we got certified, so we've walked through all those same things. And I was the same way with the tones. I literally felt like it was a joke because I couldn't hear the difference.
Yeah, I thought maybe something was wrong with it. But then my kids took it, and guess what they can do? They can hear the differences.
They have perfect pitch.
And not because they're younger. It's really not an age thing. They just really are musically inclined, and I am not. So they can hear those small differences. And so it just lets you know your brain can either do this or it can't do it. And it's okay either way.
It
lets you know.
It's not like
okay, here's my strength, or here's something that I'm not great at, but I don't need to beat myself up about it.
Yeah, it's not like a pass or fail type thing.
Exactly.
It's okay if your number memory is terribly low like mine.
You're just going to need to have, like I have 4 children, so their phone numbers and social security numbers, I'm not going to memorize those.
Yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to, I could. It would just take me a lot more time, energy, and effort.
Yeah.
I just know I need to have them. Like, that's a reference that I need to have on hand, and I can't rely on my memory.
You need to have it written down, yeah.
Yes,
Thank God for your contacts section in your phone now that you carry with you everywhere. You know what's crazy, though, is I was on the tail end of when we had home phones in every house still, and I can remember all of my friends' phone numbers. That sort of surprises me because I can remember all of their landlines in my head.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's your long-term memory.
Yeah, that's different.
So you practice those, you use them over and over, and you needed that information. And this is short-term memory. So it just lets you know what your easiest learning channels are. Mm-hmm. But once that information is stored, that's a different thing.
Okay.
So that's why, sometimes we have people who have a low verbal memory, which is memorizing words, and they still have a high vocabulary.
Yeah.
So memorizing those words, hopefully you're going to have more than 20 seconds to learn a new word. But this is just really saying, here's how your brain remembers information best.
Yeah.
And so that's really helpful for students to know, oh, gosh, I'm actually better when I listen than when I read. So I should really capitalize on that. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it's overwhelming, too, because when they throw those numbers at you on this aptitude test, it's all scattered numbers, and it says 10 seconds, remember as many as you can, and I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even remember 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because I didn't take the time, if you just remembered one line, you'd probably score higher. Right. But if you try to look at them all, it's like you're going to do bad on that one.
Yes.
So,
freeze.
Yeah.
So, let's jump into this, and let's explain what my scores are and what's beneficial to me a little bit.
I'm curious, do you remember what it means that you're a high specialist?
High specialist.
When we look at whether you're a generalist or a specialist, you want to work as part of a team. The specialist wants autonomy and independence, and they want to be responsible for their own work.
Yes.
Not necessarily have to depend on other people for their success or even their failure. Specialists want to dive deep into their field, their area of specialty. They want to know everything there is to know about it. They want to be the expert in their field, and just really that deep dive into it.
Yeah, for sure.
Did that ring true to you?
It definitely rang true with me. I hate group activities. When I was in school, when they said, all right, everybody form a group, that was the days I'd be like, oh my God, I got to find a way to skip this class. I don't want to work in a group. So yeah, definitely. Like I would love to just to know things in and out. It bothers me when I'm doing a job at work or something and I'm doing something, but I don't know the reasoning behind it. Like the rule says do this, but I'm like, why? Why does that matter? What's that in place for, So definitely that rang true. I mean, all of this rang true. It was spot on.
Good. And
I was glad that I actually took the time during the test to give it my all each time, because there were times where I'm like, I wish I could just skip forward, or because it's mentally straining to do that whole aptitude test. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad I actually just stuck with it. I'm like, you know what? Even if my words are going to be stupid, like this one right here, this is the weird test where it shows you're a specialist and it has a line and it's just a box with a line underneath it, right? And it says, think of any words, as many as you can, and write them down or type them in. So there's hat, window, door, boat, all this stuff on here. That's the example. And it's like, my brain was firing off and saying weird stuff too. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to throw it all out there. Yes. Whatever,
Sadly, we don't get to see your individual answers because we would really enjoy that.
I'm glad you didn't.
But Highlands, who produces the test, scores it all for us. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't the part that said you were a specialist. That's the part that said that you have a long time frame.
Oh, okay.
So you had the patience to come up with a lot of different answers, and you probably kind of enjoyed sitting there and thinking about things, and that basically lets us know that you're drawn to things that take time to achieve. And so, building this podcast, you're probably looking, this is where I want it to be in 5 to 10 years, and this is kind of what my goals are, and if it takes a while, that's okay.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, have a very short time frame.
You want to see instant results.
I kind of want to see instant results. I don't really. I love doing evaluations. I used to be a speech therapist, and I love doing evaluations, presenting the information, and then moving on to the next student.
Yeah.
I really didn't like the implementation of therapy with the same child for year after year, and that's when I realized that about myself. I'm like, oh, it wasn't that I didn't like my job. It's just these are the things that I liked better and that were a better fit for me.
You just weren't the right fit for it.
Yes. Yeah. So that was really helpful to me. And I think when people realize some of these things about themselves, they're like, oh, this is why this part of my job stretches me, and this is why this part of my job fits me. And it wasn't that I couldn't do that job, but if I could have done more evaluations, I probably would have stayed with it. Or if I would have worked in the hospitals and stayed with that quick turnaround of patients and done acute care, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the podcast game isn't one for people that want instant results. If you want instant results, go make YouTube videos with flashy, clickbaity thumbnails, and try to gain views immediately. With a podcast, they say it takes like 2 to 3 years. So I know that I'm not going to get any results out of this. Maybe never. It's just something I enjoy doing. So if you do have a problem with that and you want to see stuff now, this is a terrible game to get into.
Yes.
Doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself as future focused in a lot of different ways?
Certain ways, yeah. I probably financially and stuff like that, I would say I'm future focused, but as far as like health and stuff, I'm definitely not. So certain ways, yeah, probably. But
I'm in the high range like you are. So I'm a long range thinker. I'm future focused. And like Kristi said, she's on the low end. And because I just use those terms, I want to explain low does not mean bad and high mean good. Think about it as on a continuum. Where do you fall on that continuum or that scale? And whatever end you're on, it just tells us very specific things about you and how you're wired. So Kristi's on the low end. She's more of that immediate. So she can very easily see, okay, if that's where we're moving, that's the direction we're moving in, then right now this, and this needs to happen. And she can just pull the trigger and delegate and execute. I'm in the high range. So I'm holding on to where can we take this and the big dreams and the big things that I want to happen. So when we first launched True Compass, this became very apparent of how we fell on different ends of the scale, because I was not encouraged by the little baby steps of checking the box. And Kristi would have to remind me, we have to do the baby steps to get to the big stuff.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate the fact that we just checked off all of our goals for the first year of this business. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to quit holding on to what this is going to look like in 10 years when we're on all the billboards and every household that has a teenager knows we exist. That's my goal of like, we are going to be a household name. If you have a teenager, then you know about True Compass.
Yeah.
Well, to get to that point, we have to do the everyday stuff. And I can lose focus of that really easily, and things can feel tedious on the everyday if I don't connect it to the big picture, because the big picture is what matters to me and motivates me. So when we're moving through the things that I feel like are pointless sometimes, I have to make that connection that I got to check these small boxes so that we can get to the big stuff.
Yeah. Well, that makes you a perfect team then, right?
It does.
Yeah.
You kind of balance each other out on all that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you will be a household name in everybody's house someday, right? That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why, I'm not going to let anybody come on as a repeat guest, because I don't want listeners to get bored with it, hearing the same thing twice. But because of the fact that you are in this career field where you're helping people find their dream careers, and podcast is Careers Over Beers, that's important for me. And I hope listeners get something out of that and get something out of this, because that's a big part of doing this thing. I want people to be able to listen to a career and understand what it is inside and out, and not just read a job description somewhere and say, oh, I had no clue that they do this stuff.
Yeah, that's so important to us. I mean, that's definitely one of the last steps that we recommend to students. Here are the careers that align with your aptitudes. Go find them. Go talk to people. Go see if it really is a good fit. Because when people have aptitude profiles like yours, with a lot of the high-end scores, or on the other hand, if they have a lot of low-end scores, it kind of says you really need to be, you really need to look at your interests more,
Mm-hmm.
because you're kind of wired to do almost anything.
I am?
Yeah. So you have a lot of careers that come up because you score high in all of the driving abilities.
Okay.
So it is no shock to Robyn and I that you wear so many hats at work, you have other jobs outside of work, because in order to fill all of your buckets, you have to do a lot of different things.
I like to do a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're kind of driven to do those things.
Which is shocking, because anybody that knew me in high school would think I would probably end up doing nothing with my life.
I think having this is a revelation for why school wasn't a great match for you. It couldn't meet all these needs, the traditional classroom at least, of sitting and listening, or a lecture base, taking notes, paper, pencil. You needed problem solving and challenge and more involvement in your learning. Your brain just isn't wired for that traditional classroom.
Definitely not. No. And I understand that now after I went through this and you explained it to me, over Zoom when we went through my entire results package, I started to realize that, these are real reasons why I didn't try in school. Part of it was also because I was an idiot, but some of it, maybe will make my parents a little bit happier to know that my brain just wasn't working for it or wired for it.
Right.
But
yeah.
And you, with that long time frame, you didn't see the connection to any long-term goals. It all felt. So there's a few reasons. Your long time frame, your rhythm memory. You have high rhythm memory, which means sitting still isn't your favorite thing.
No, I can't do it.
And especially just sitting still and listening, which is a lot of classroom. And then you have high spatial abilities. And so you like to do things that are more hands-on, and you learn well that way. You're very visual. And so sitting and listening in a classroom is not the best thing for you.
It actually feels like one of the worst things.
Yes, yeah. And I think, in some ways schools are figuring that out and offering different things and allowing kids to stand up during class. I mean, you probably would have liked a stand-up desk or a bouncy ball to sit on. That actually would have kept your brain alive a little bit more, or awake and more. And so sometimes when we have kids who've struggled in school and they do something like this, they realize, oh, this is why it was hard. And here's all the things that I can do that won't be sitting at a desk.
Right. Yeah.
And even though you spend some of your day sitting at a desk, I'm sure.
I do, yeah.
You still get to use that part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Where you feel challenged enough. There's enough problems coming at you all the time to keep your brain firing and keep it engaged.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of the things we see from your profile is you really need a foundation of problem solving. You need to always be have that ability to troubleshoot and be innovative and creative in the sense of how you're going to problem solve. And real rote routine work would be a terrible scenario for you.
Well, that's one reason why I do like being in the technology field and cybersecurity and stuff, is because a lot of that job you can automate. You can set things up to run themselves. You can write all these scripts that do all these checks for you in the network, So a lot of it I can automate and let it run on its own, and then I can do other things while that's going on, So I do a lot of things while I'm doing that. But what else was I going to say? Oh, in school, classes that I did excel in were shop class and video production. Like, video production was my shit. I love doing that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. So
it makes total sense.
It all adds up, doesn't it? That's cool.
Do you do much coding right now?
Not very often. No.
What did you think of coding when you were learning it?
When I was learning it in school, like I took a few classes in college for it, and I didn't ever engage or like it too much until I started using it for reasons that I needed. Like, I couldn't do it in school. If they gave me an assignment and I had to learn all this, I would just think, what, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this. I would get the bare minimum done so I could pass. And then, really, I didn't start caring or learning about coding until at work I was starting to write scripts and things like that use coding languages, and I can do this with it. I can make it do this for me, or I can make it search this entire database instead of me doing it myself, So once I was able to see an application for it, I liked it and started doing it. But sitting in a classroom, I just It's not my thing. I can't learn something I don't know what it's going to benefit me for or do something for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But your high concept organization, I mean, you scored 99th percentile on that. That's your ability to logically order information. And so when you sit down to code something, your brain knows exactly what needs to happen and in what order.
Yes.
And go from A to Z and not skip any steps. Whereas somebody who scores low in concept organization says, I know what it wants to look like, what I want it to look like at the end, but I'm not really sure how to organize it, so somebody else do that for me.
Yeah.
Which we need those people. People who score low on the driving abilities sometimes are really good at managing and leading teams of people. Because they don't feel the need to solve every problem themselves or work through every step. But they need someone like you who can has that high concept organization, to really go from A to Z and know how to do that the most efficient way.
Yeah.
So that's
I definitely
one way
see
that.
that.
You have that outlet for that. And then that in combination with your spatial skills makes computer science perfect.
It does.
Yeah.
And podcasting, maybe.
And podcasting.
Absolutely. And it's another reason why we can't just pull one piece out of your profile and let it drive decisions. Because if we were to look just at your concept organization, what Kristi just explained, then coding would be perfect, be a computer programmer. But when we take everything else into account and your personality, we know you need a lot more than that. But it's nice to know you're capable of that, and it will come very easily to you. So that may be one role that you play, and then you move past it and get to the stuff that's really going to challenge you and keep you engaged and be more meaningful to you. And even as you described that, of needing something tangible and real out of your work is another thing we see out of your profile.
Yeah, something that means something to me, something I can get out of it and say, oh, I did that or whatever.
Right.
That's why I like mowing grass too. When
The
you get done
lines.
mowing the lawn, you look at it and you're like, wow, I just did that.
Everybody who's
Isn't that
spatial,
nice?
every male who's spatial, who's high on the spatials, brings up mowing.
It's amazing.
It's a thing.
I used to have a mowing business when I was a kid, like 6th grade to 10th grade. Had a little mowing business, so I'm real particular about it.
You still kind of do have a mowing business.
I kind of do, yeah. I mow for the keg.
It's the best.
It is.
I'm curious. Okay, so when we see some of your aptitudes and your personality, some of the things that align or are overlapping is the innovative, creative piece. So I'm curious what that means to you and where you see that play out in your life, in your career.
Well, I can just say, like, the podcast has been a really, really good creative outlet for me. Not only is it, a conversation and a podcast, but also just the art of it. Like on YouTube, I have to create a new thumbnail every week that I think looks good. I have to edit it the way that I want to. I'm coming out with a new little comedy mini-series type thing about my podcast, which I'm real particular on. So all that stuff is new in my life and within the past 3 years or so. Before that, I always felt like there was something I needed to do. I always, I didn't really have any creative outlet for a long time there after high school. And I remember just thinking, like, I got to do something, what can I do? I can't sing. I can't play instruments very good. I need to do something here. That's when I started thinking about doing a podcast because I'm like, I can talk to people. I can sit there and drink and listen. So that's, before I had this, I felt like that was missing in my life, Now it feels fulfilling. Now I feel like I don't have enough time to do everything, which is good for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I tell people all the time in my life, if I don't have something to do, it's bad news. I end up doing bad things. I end up just not doing anything good for myself at all.
Okay.
So being busy and having something to do all the time keeps my life on order.
It's healthy.
On track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So that's cool to see this all play out. And for everybody listening right now, this I'm not sugarcoating this at all. I'm not trying to make them pleased or happy. Like when they're explaining these things to me, every single time I'm like, holy crap, that makes a lot of sense. And it's not just a generalized thing either. It's not like, no offense to people with horoscope readings and stuff, but you could apply that to a lot of people. This is so specific that you really see it and you're like, you know what? That is just crazy spot on. You could probably, everybody's is probably completely different, right?
Yes.
Rather than having
Enough
like 8
to make
different
it
readings or
interesting.
whatever. Yeah.
That's what's crazy is, we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients at this point, and it never gets old because everybody's is just different enough to make it enough of a challenge for us and to make it really fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because all these different categories, like you could go to an online personality test or do an online type Facebook test or something, and it's probably going to throw out like 8 different personality types or scenarios or whatever it is. Whereas on here, it's probably completely unique. I doubt you've ever had somebody that's exactly the same as another person.
Right.
On these scales here.
Right. And it's, the difference is it's subjective.
Yeah.
So there is, the introvert extrovert scale on this, which is the only subjective, meaning how you answer questions. That's how they get that information. And most personality tests are that way. It's an important piece because of your personality, we put that on top of these aptitudes.
Yeah, for sure.
And figure that out.
It's important to have it all together to see it.
Yes. Yeah. It's really helpful.
What was I an extrovert or an introvert? I can't remember.
Well, you scored extroverted on this test, but when you did the online personality test, which we just do kind of a free version, you scored introverted on that.
Really?
So that means you're in the middle.
I'm in the middle, yeah. That makes sense.
If you take the true full Myers-Briggs, the introversion, extroversion scale, all of the different letters have 5 different facets. And so you probably score extroverted on some of them and introverted on the others.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yes, and so that can be really helpful to people because they're like, well, I'm somewhere in the middle. Well, sure you are. So that's really helpful. So you were an INFJ, and you might be somewhere between INFJ and an ENFJ. But the INFJ, when you put those together, that really brings out most INFJs have that innovative, creative side to them, even more so.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. So that, I think that's kind of why you felt
that
like that was
in
the
here
best
somewhere,
fit.
wasn't it? It's personality.
Probably in the front, yeah.
Is it in the front?
So let me give you some words that describe the INFJ.
There we
go.
And you tell me if this fits you. Are you empathetic?
Yes.
Are you innovative?
I would say so.
Are you loyal?
Yes.
Are you a good listener?
I hope so.
I know.
I do a podcast.
Not materialistic.
No.
Okay.
No.
Rebellious.
A little bit, yeah.
Stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. My teachers would say so.
Okay. And are you, it says keen lie detector. So do you read people well?
I would like to think so, yeah. Okay. You never really know, though, but I would like to think so. I can kind of call somebody's bullshit if I think they're telling me a lie. So,
and I like that you fall in the middle range of that extrovert introvert because it sure seems like your life plays out in that way of your different career roles. Your 9 to 5 you probably bounce back and forth between that introvert extrovert. Where if you need to dive in and do independent work, you can do that for as long as necessary and then pull away and have the teamwork and be able to engage other people or be that specialist. That's what's really great about being in the middle range. When you're a specialist, like I said, you want independence and autonomy. Well, that naturally pulls you away from everybody else when you're that specialist because you want to dive deep. And that means you don't want to be interrupted. You don't want to work with other people to get there. But when you have enough of that extroversion in you, that means I have knowledge that I want to bring to people. I'm an expert on something. I can be that advisor, that consultant. I can bring that information to you to help you or benefit you in some way.
Yeah.
Versus if you were a 99th percentile introvert and a specialist, you'd be in the lab with the door closed and the world doesn't know you exist. Yeah. Which there are those people and they're perfectly content. But I love when a specialist brings their expertise to the world. I love to see that combination.
At the same time, though, it does bug me. Like if I see somebody doing something that I know how to do better, it's hard for me to teach people because I'm like, just get out of my way. Just let me do this,
Yes, that's your high classification.
I don't think I'm a good teacher. Like if I have somebody that I'm trying to teach something, it's taking them forever. And I'm like, oh my God.
Fair enough.
Just let me do it.
Yes.
You just completely described classification.
Yes. Yeah. So the classification one was the one with the 6 pictures or 7 pictures. And you have to find the 3 that go together best. And it's really a diagnostic problem solving.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there and logically figure it out or read a problem. You're just taking that information and making a quick decision. And people who score high on classification solve problems quickly. They see the solution quickly, and they just want to move on to the next problem.
Just get it out of my way, yeah.
Which is another reason, going back to school, you sat in class, you had to listen to the teacher explain it 5 times to people who were not understanding, and you checked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you got it the first time.
I think so, if I was even there.
If you were paying attention. When you were there.
Fair enough.
And paying attention, you understood it.
Yeah.
Yes, and so people with high classification often don't have that patience for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's partly why we have to put that personality on top of that. I score high in classification, which I think is another reason that I liked diagnosing and moving on.
Yeah.
Didn't really
Going
always
quickly,
have the patience.
move.
Yes, let's get on to the next one. But I was raised to be patient. I'm the youngest of 5,
Yeah.
There was no
You wait your turn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my personality on top of that allows me to I love working I loved working with kids with disabilities. I love doing what I do now. But I kind of like a little faster pace. And this made so much sense to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It makes total sense to me. When you were covering it with me, Robyn, I was like, it's insane how spot on it is. I was kind of blown away, to be honest, just sitting there. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. It's exactly how I was. I didn't realize it's how I was. I don't know if you caught the podcast I did with my old high school teacher.
Greg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He talked about how I was in his class, and I don't even remember doing this, but he said, I told him one day that I'm not going to do any of the homework assignments, but I'm going to ace every test. And he said, okay. And that's what I did, and it worked out to a C, and I was like, that's perfect. I passed, because I didn't have time for the homework, the stupid stuff. I'm not going to go home and do that work that I already know how to do. Just give me a test, I'll ace it, and whatever. And I did that with everything in high school. I knew that if I did certain things, I could still get a C and pass, and I wouldn't have to do the rest of it. Because it didn't matter to me. I didn't care back then. It's like, what is this going to do? Nothing. It's not going to do anything for me. And I was kind of right, unfortunately, so I hope kids don't listen to that part of advice.
And not everybody can read between the lines or fill in the gaps like you can. Luckily, you had an ability to just jump into the test and pass it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's because I was very smart. I think it's because I'm a good test taker.
Okay.
I know how to deduct things really well.
Yes, that's a great way to explain it. Yes, and a lot of common sense, and but not all of us could do that. I had to read every textbook in college and take notes and listen to every lecture. Not everybody's wired like that, but I think maybe a good takeaway is if we can figure out how you're wired in that moment at that time and figure out what do you need? How can we keep you challenged? What are going to be the best courses for you to take? How can we advance you so you're not feeling like this is a waste of your time?
Yeah, and it's huge to catch them when they're in that stage in their life, and you can kind of show them why they are the way they are. Because if you see this when you're 17, you can build off of it and say, well, that's the reason why I'm like that. I need to do more of this stuff and this stuff. Versus somebody that has no clue and has never gone through anything like this. They just think, I'm just not good at anything.
Exactly.
It's not going to be good for anything,
Yeah.
Which a lot of kids think, including myself. I was like, I don't think that I'm good for any job. I just need a normal job, I don't think I'm good at anything. So
yeah, I would have loved to have been able to meet with you when you were 17, 18. Although the path that it's hard to know based on your maturity. You might have needed to take the steps that you did.
Yeah.
But I think you would have been maybe encouraged to try some different things. And imagine the confidence this would have built for you.
Oh, yeah, it would have. If I would have seen on paper experts like you who were telling me this is the reason why you are, it would have been a game changer. Instead, I just thought I'm not good at it. I'm not built for this workforce of this world or whatever,
Right.
And you have these dark thoughts when you're in that age and you're a kid and you're like, screw it, I'm just not going to do anything. That's why, the military, I think, saved my life probably. But it's there's a lot of people out there and a lot of kids out there that are in that stage, and to see this and do this, if they can get their hands on this, it's huge.
Yeah. And there are kids, who struggled in high school, even if they tried harder than you did. And high school was hard. And they feel really down on themselves. And we get kids who score low on these driving abilities. Again, high or low is equally important.
It doesn't mean smarter or dumber.
No. But we ran into a mom the other day. Her son scored fairly low on all of the driving abilities. He's really extroverted, such a people person. I mean, he's just a natural leader.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to solve every problem himself. He's great at managing people. And he has risen from starting to work at a department store to leading 47 people, and he's only 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So he's going to school, but this is he's working quite a bit, almost full time.
See, that's huge that you could point that out to some,
Yes.
that it doesn't matter what your driving abilities are or what you are
Yes.
good at on this, but if you can show them that you're good at leading people. Some of the best bosses that I've had in my life didn't understand the work that we did.
Right.
They weren't experts. They couldn't figure it out. And they weren't, not that they weren't smart enough, but they just didn't get it the same way that we did, but they were a great boss.
Exactly.
They got out of the way and let you do your job.
They knew how to put people and make them excel at things,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a good football coach. The coach might not be a very good football player at all, but they can know where to put people to make them excel the most,
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to be able to speak that into somebody as well. And it goes the opposite. Sometimes you'll see a profile and you're like, okay, you're going to be really good at what you do to the point that promotions are going to be on the table for you because they're going to see, hey, you're the best at what you do. We want you to teach everybody else to do it like this.
Yeah.
And we can look at that profile and say, don't take that promotion.
Yeah.
Don't be that person because you won't be happy.
Yeah.
You have to be in the trenches. You have to be the one doing the work. You're not going to be happy managing other people that get to do that work.
Yep.
And you might be one of those people.
A little bit.
It being in the trenches.
You want to do the work. You want to solve the problems.
Yeah.
You don't want
to pass it off to somebody else.
5,000 foot view.
Oh, no, probably not. Dealing with people is a whole different ballgame. My dad has done both as an accountant, and he says, I'd rather deal with tough equations and numbers than tough people.
Yeah. And he might be more of a specialist like you.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Whereas the generalist cares a little bit more about the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just really good to be able to speak into people and tell them that about themselves so they can kind of keep their options open.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, this test said I can't be a leader. I can never be a leader. It means here's where your challenges are going to be.
You can do anything you want, but
absolutely.
you might have a little bit more difficult of a time than somebody that's a natural,
Yes.
natural leader, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So when we speak with adults or work with teams, we don't say you need to do this, you need to do that. We let them know here's where your strengths are, here's where your challenges are, here's the parts of your job that stretch you. What can you do to, improve yourself in those areas, or maybe delegate those things to someone else or share. Robyn and I have to share a lot of things, but there's definitely things that she's better at than I am, and vice versa. And so we can kind of, have those discussions and really know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really valuable about this.
Yeah, for sure. I wish I would have had this years ago, but I'm going to make my brother take it. He actually just got back from, he went to space camp this summer, so he just got back. We're going to get him set up here soon, and he's going to do this whole thing. Good. Even though he kind of has an idea what he wants to do, it'll still help him, I think. He's like, I don't need that. I already know I want to be an aerospace engineer. And I'm like, yeah, but you might want to be like the leader of the company instead of the engineer. You just don't know. Yeah. So we're going to get him signed up. We're going to have him take this.
And sometimes just confirmation, just that having that confirmation,
the extra boost.
Yes, that
you
validation.
Are capable.
You're on the right path. Yeah. Absolutely. And another goal for when we work with young people, a goal of ours is that hopefully once you're well into your career, that you don't have to wonder what if. Mm-hmm. You know why you chose the path you did, and what other doors were open to you, and why you didn't choose those.
Yep.
So you don't have to play that game of, well, what's plan B, or what should I have been?
Or I think I would have been a great doctor, or
right.
I could have been a great, IT specialist or whatever instead of this manager of a construction company.
Yeah.
But then you look back and you're like, oh, actually, I'm built better to be a manager.
Yes. Yeah.
Than a IT nerd,
Yeah. It gives people some confirmation, but also they just feel better about it. Like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Is there anything else on here that you wanted to cover on me?
Well, careers, you were computer science came up really strong.
That's right, yeah.
Tech, anything tech.
Careers.
Medical was really high for you.
Don't tell me that. My sister is a doctor.
Well.
And I just don't think I would enjoy it as much as she does.
That's fair. That's why we have these conversations. And that's why we look at you as a whole. Because if we had 17-year-old Jessie sitting here, and we were really encouraging medicine and explored that, and you have zero interest and you know that's not for you, then we're not going to continue to encourage and push that. We just need to make sure you know what doors are open to you.
This is the thing, though, is that I've never worked in the medical industry, so I can't really speak for that. If 17-year-old Jessie would have told you I have zero interest in computers too. I had nothing to do with computers or video games or anything when I was a kid. I didn't do any of it until I joined the military, and I was basically forced to at that point because I signed up for a job that had a signing bonus. No idea what I was getting into, and that's how I fell into the technology field. So it's hard to say. I mean, maybe I would enjoy the medical field. Part of me thinks I might in some aspects because I like looking into things like I like listening to health podcasts and health professionals talk about different ways you can benefit yourself by sauna use or diet, but I don't know how I'd feel about doing surgery on somebody, Maybe I'd like it. I don't know.
It's a big world without having to cut somebody open.
It is, yeah.
The healthcare world is big without you can eliminate surgery. But that's why you at 17, why we tell you how important it is to keep an open mind to these. Please don't eliminate any of these career options just because you assume it's one way or another. We want you to research it and look into it and job shadow. Get out there, see what it looks like to the day-to-day so that you can say, yeah, now I know that medicine's not what I want and I know why. Yeah. I can articulate it of why it's not for me.
Right, yep. But at least you know, that you could have done it if you wanted to versus always doubting yourself if you decided to go medical and you're like, I don't think I was built for this when you're in med school,
Right.
At least you could still reference this and be like, actually, all these tests show that I am capable if I put my mind to it.
Right.
So.
Yes. Yeah. And what else? Analyst. You came up high. Intelligence analyst.
Yeah, that's funny that came up. I can't really speak too much on that right now.
Yep. Okay.
On the air, but that's a very funny coincidence that came up on my test.
Yeah, I'd say those were the highest. A lot of medical healthcare, computer science, tech. Those were the things that really showed up for you.
Mm-hmm. Hairdresser? Is that what this says?
It probably does.
Hey, you need another gig.
I've never tried it.
It's very hands-on. Actually, that's one of the things I loved about this test is that it gives you a variety. So if there are kids who are like, I'm done, I don't want to go to school, and no matter what their driving abilities are, there are careers in every level that are suggested. Yeah. And so there are kids who maybe have the capacity and possibly the ability to get their master's degree, but they don't want to do that. Yeah. And so they can look at careers at each level. But just knowing, okay, you're wired for this, but if you don't have any interest, you're not going to keep going to school for that long. Mm-hmm. And so it is kind of nice to be able to make suggestions based on those different levels. And even though hairdresser came up for you, Robyn and I would have talked you through all of the reasons why it maybe isn't the best fit for you. Because not every...
wow, hairdresser, makeup artist.
It's that creative piece, Jessie.
It's that creative. Yeah. But if you look at the abilities that those careers are looking at, it only looks at some of the things that you're good at. And it doesn't take into account your other high driving abilities.
Okay.
So... Oh, that's designing, yeah. So
designing, yeah.
Designing does meet a lot of your needs, but that's something that's why it's nice to have someone to go through it with you.
For sure,
to
yeah.
Really talk about
it's better to hear you talk about it to me than just reading this all on my own.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, it can feel a little overwhelming because there are so many careers. But that's also what I like, because if kids do think, oh, I for sure want to do medical, and they look into it and think, oh, this isn't quite right, or what I thought it was, they have another a list to go back and look at. And, oh, I'm also wired for these things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to use you as an example when I meet with students now. When they're kind of resistant on a path, I'm going to tell your story of you weren't a gamer, you didn't build websites, you didn't code until you had to. And then it became your world, and you're good at it, and you like it.
It did. And you know what's funny, even crazier, is that after I was a few years into it, I was still going to college because I was in the reserves. So I was going to school, and I changed my major like 5 different times because I really still didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad kept telling me, he's like, you have all this training and certifications in these IT certifications, you know. He's like, you learned all this stuff. I mean, why don't you just do that for your career? And I still said no. It's like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. It's like, I don't have an interest in doing that. And it wasn't until I started working it that I was like, okay. Because I was in the reserves, like I said, so I learned it all. And for 3 years, I think, I was just 1 week in a month out there going to school full time. That was my plan all along, was I was just going to go out there for 4 years, reserve, go to college, and then get out. And then I started working an internship at an IT help desk, and then I got a job full-time out at the base. And that's where I started to be like, wow, this is actually awesome. You know, I love this job. And that's when I decided I'm going to go ahead and do it and pursue it in school too. So I didn't know until I was working it, really.
What do you do you think just the classes seemed boring to you, and so that's why you didn't think you were going to like it? Or what was your resistance?
I didn't understand how it actually worked. I mean, after I learned it in tech school through the military and stuff, I finally understood how things worked and how computers operated and the language they were written in. I got it, you know, but I didn't know what that meant as far as working it in the real world.
Yes.
And until I started doing it in the real world and realizing, like, oh, this is awesome. If I figure this out, I can get this done. And, you know, like there's a lot of things I could go into and nerd out on, but once I realized what it actually entails and all the different things you can do with it, like, you know, you're the key holder. If you're the network administrator, it's a powerful position, and you can configure things how you want. You can make things quicker and faster, better. You know, you can look like a wizard if you fix somebody's stuff. All of that stuff, I was like, this is great. You know, I've never been good at anything in my life, really, and now I'm finally doing something. Google. If you Google, I mean, that's what the IT secret is right there. You can use Google and Google problems that people have, and you look like, oh, how did you know that? Well, I typed it in Google, you know?
Right, but you also understood what Google told you.
You understood what it told you, yeah.
The rest of us are like, I still need someone to explain this.
Yeah. So until I started doing that, I didn't really understand why I would have been good or liked it.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes just taking an intro class into something doesn't give kids a good look at what the real world application is.
Yeah.
And that's why we really encourage students, if you think you're interested, go job shadow.
For sure.
Go talk to someone, you know, see what their actual job is.
Exactly.
Because if you just take an intro coding class, you might be like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you know, oh, I need to know this language because I'm going to do this, this, and this with it later, okay, now it's worth it for me.
Exactly. That's where you need to connect the dots where I couldn't make it connect. When a teacher gives you an assignment on coding, I would look at it and say, this is nonsense. But if I figure out, oh, I can make it my own application for scheduling podcasts if I know the language to write that in, then it's like bing, 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 and I'll learn it right away, you know? Yes. I have to, my brain is wired, I have to understand it. Yeah. Like this thing shows, you know? Mm-hmm. Just like your assessment shows.
Make it meaningful.
Make it meaningful, yeah. So, yeah. Cool. What else did you want to cover in here? Did you want to...
I think I want to just, what you were just talking about, I want to just touch on that of, you know, we won't convince, especially a student, somebody still in high school or college, it's not our job to convince you of what career you should go pick. We look at this of our place if we're planting the seeds and we're hoping and praying that you'll water them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You got to... It's in their court, you know, after you give them this stuff.
Yeah, you have to put the time and energy into it.
You do.
And then your future self will Thank you. But when we work with adults, it's a totally different thing because you get it. You can see the connections. You have the experience to tie it back to. And then that just helps adults advance or just have more contentment in their career of understanding, what roles they're going to be best at, which roles to maybe delegate or where to pivot, where to make changes.
Yeah.
So when we get to work with adults, it's just as satisfying because it's almost more immediate results. With the students, we're planting the seeds. With adults, it's like, oh, I get it, and now I'm going to make changes.
That's how I was, I'm so glad that I did do it, and I can look back at this now and reference it because I've shown my parents the ones that you sent me online a couple times. I'm like, look at this, isn't this crazy? Have you seen this yet?
And
my mom wants to take it now too.
Everybody should take it.
Everybody should know.
It's such a self-discovery tool.
It is, yeah. It's fun to read things about yourself, and understand yourself a little bit more.
Yeah. And if we would have met with you maybe 5-6 years ago, you might have been like, oh, I'm missing this in my life, this creative.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of knew it intuitively and sought it out. So right now, you may not have seen a lot of things that you need to change, but I bet your wheels are turning about, oh, this is the right direction for me at work.
I'm going to go to med school.
You're going to be a barber. Maybe someday in the nursing home, you'll be the barber.
I'll be the barber.
You'll have an
for all your friends.
That creative outlet.
You know what I've always wanted to do is give like those clean, straight shaves, like the old timers,
Yeah.
With the blade.
With the straight blade. That's satisfying for me to watch.
It's destiny.
Yeah.
It's in your future.
Hairdresser or makeup artist,
Go for it.
Yeah. Or I'll go to med school.
Yeah.
Join my sister.
Any of it.
She's probably thinking, yeah, right. If she's listening to this right now, she's like, you can't go through med school. Which I can't. It's way too much school for me.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot of sitting and learning.
This one was really hard. This is a...
You scored great on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but it was hard for me. For people that can't see it really, it's a bunch of dots with lines that are connecting them in all different directions. And so you had like 10 minutes to study that, and then the lines would disappear, and you got to recreate where they were drawn. And there's probably some of them were like 20 or 30 lines, and you're like, when you're looking at it, you just have to hope that you can get a portion of it because there's no way you're ever going to memorize unless you have some crazy special ability,
Which you do.
You do.
So even though
I still
it was
feel like I
taxing
failed.
your brain remembered where most of those were.
Yeah.
I would look at that and I'm like, okay, I got it. And then the lines would disappear and I was like, I don't know where they were. And again, it's not like if I studied and got better at that, that's not a strength for me.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of nice to be like, okay, this is how I'm wired and this is how I'm not wired. And I'm not going to spend any time beating myself up that I'm not good at this, this, or this.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to do things that really lean into my strengths. And you probably use this ability, especially you have design memory, observation, even your pitch discrimination. Some of those they're just your ability to pay that attention to detail, visual details, but also listening. So you notice
my drill instructor would be very proud of that right now. Attention to detail. That's the most important thing in the military. Mm-hmm. Attention to detail.
Yes. Yeah. But even when you're talking about, creating the thumbnails for the podcast, like you know what it should look like and you're going to be very particular.
Right.
So it's just how you're wired and it's nice to have an outlet for it.
It is. Yeah. Have you ever had any people like Rain Man that just can memorize this stuff?
You scored as high as you can score on it.
So
you probably have a little bit of like a photographic memory. You see it, and you remember it. Graphs, charts,
I was thinking like
blueprints.
Rain Man though. Somebody that's have you ever seen that guy that's autistic that flew over New York City and he drew the entire skyline from memory? He flew over it in a helicopter and just looked at it once, got back to his studio and drew the entire New York skyline accurate.
I have seen that.
Amazing.
That's some Rain Man stuff right there.
No, that's true. All right, you're not that.
No.
But compared to anyone who's taken this test, you're pretty darn high.
That visual design, that's your gig.
Hopefully I don't lose my sight. Anyways, anything else you want to cover on here? Or you think you covered it all? You want to say anything to people out there listening? Make sure they know where to find you. this is a super important test for everybody listening out there. Please reach out to them at True Compass. It's really, really cool to learn about yourself and understand it. You have to pay for the aptitude test, right?
Yes.
And then that gives you an hour of review or so, 2 hours of review?
It's actually 2 hours.
Okay.
And we'll send you can do all of the testing online at home at your own convenience. So, like you said, it's 19 different timed exercises, but we have students who just do a few at a time. Mm-hmm. They might do it over the course of a few weeks. And then we also do some personality, interest, and values. So we really look at the whole person.
Yeah.
Because maybe one of the things you value is not going to school for 12 years, and that's partly why you didn't choose medical school.
For sure. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are really important things for students to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of walk them through all of that. So we do a 2-hour follow-up session or review session that goes over all of the results. But we also work with adults.
Yeah.
You know, who maybe feel like something's missing or are thinking about the next step. And, you know, do I want to take this promotion? Do I want to improve myself as a leader? What are my, and the Highlands actually has a true leadership report based on this, and you have access to your own leadership report. So say your boss really does want to promote you. You can go look at that and say, well, here's my challenges. I'm going to want to solve all the problems myself. It's going to be, I'm going to have a really growth mindset to think about how to change.
Yeah.
But maybe you'll keep some parts to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, knowing, okay, these will be my problems, but I'll delegate the rest of them. And you'll figure out the way to work for you. But yeah, so we work with students, adults, teams.
Yeah, and I'm an adult, believe it or not, people, and I got a lot out of this. I gained a lot out of this, and I'm glad that I did it. And if I thought it wasn't worth it, I wouldn't be making my brother do it, who's 18 right now. My mom wants to do it after she saw my results. Like, this is the real deal. It's not a joke. It's not just one of those fake personality things you do online. Right. It's not a Facebook quiz. You're getting the real deal out of this, and it's going to be extremely beneficial. Like I've said 100 times on this podcast already, I've loved to have seen this when I was a kid or a younger kid, and I still love to see it. I love going through this. It's fun to read about yourself, you know, like I said.
We're so glad you value it.
Oh, yeah. We're making my brother do this.
Good.
He's going to do it.
Good.
So.
We think everybody should, no matter what stage of life or what.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to benefit.
Go for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have any last words or anything? Tell people where they can find you, even though you already did.
Yeah. Our website is truecompassllc.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, True Compass Wichita.
Yep. All in my description, all on my social media pages.
I'd give our phone number, but nobody calls anybody anymore. So
they don't?
316-202-8090. Just in case. You can actually text that number too.
Yeah. You better hope I don't blow up and get 5 million subscribers tomorrow, or you're going to have trolls calling you.
I'll do it. It's fine.
All right, everybody. Reach out to them if you have a child or you yourself want to learn about yourself and learn what your strengths are. You're doing some great stuff out there. Thank you so much for coming on twice and giving me your time.
Yeah, thanks for what you do. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
We can refer our students to this podcast.
Refer your students to me, even though I drink a little alcohol on it. Hopefully that doesn't deter people. It's really more just to get the guests loose, you know.
Yes.
You don't want somebody tense over there trying to talk. Somebody that's nervous. So, True Compass, folks. Thank you guys very much, and see you again sometime soon.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jesse.
I wish the best for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Cheers. Oh, we gotta do cheers.